Welcome to Tuesday's show, everyone. We are hopefully going to be surviving a thunderstorm. I just heard thunder in the background. I don't know if you heard it here or not, but we'll get through this one way or the other. It's that Houston weather. You never know what's going to happen. Some days it's 105, like it was yesterday, right before it started storming. Then it stopped, and then now we're back at it again. So it's summertime too. What can I say? Well, at least summer for us down here in the South. And speaking of South, we have Zachary Rosenberg with us, who is also in the South. So I think he knows quite well about our storms going on here.
Yes, I am in Florida, so we know a thing or two about those storms.
Probably a little bit of the heat too.
That's putting it mildly.
But you are a horror author, if I'm correct.
That is correct. Horror and sci-fi fantasy, but horror is where I've had the most success so far.
And sci-fi fantasy. That's a good combo to have. So multi-genre. So tell us, what inspired you to start writing?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I've loved stories. I've loved reading. I've loved, reading all kinds of different stories, everything from science fiction, fantasy, and horror, historical fiction, thrillers, and kind of just the idea of, ever since I was a little kid, make up stories of my own, have ideas, let my imagination run wild. And as I got older, it's like, hey, maybe I should put what's on my mind to page. And I started doing that more, put more words on the page. I decided, hey, let's start sending it out. Let's, make the dream a reality. And so far, it's kind of working out a little.
And that's always a good thing right there. Now, from what I also understand, and it's in the bio here, you're also a lawyer?
I am. That is the day job. Yep. Being an attorney is basically that's what pays the bills. And it also gets... it actually helps with writing skills sometimes. So,
I mean, that can be a horror in itself. So how do you find the time to write and continue the job?
Well, that's my secret. I don't always. There are plenty of days where I'm just like, I don't have the time or I'm not able to, but I try doing it in the evenings when I can, or on the weekends. Basically there are times I'm just like, okay, rest your brain. It's like cathartic therapy sometimes too. It's like you're able to sit down and focus on, something that is fun, something that doesn't have any real life stakes, that, essentially, stretch the creative muscle. Writing isn't so much a chore as it is it's a fun thing.
Well, I know you can't use real names and all that, but have you ever tried to combine anything that happens in the court to any of your books?
I try to avoid that, honestly, because that's such real stuff for other people that, it's the day job, but I'm kind of set. Obviously, I'm a part of it, but it's still so personal to other people. I don't really want to include, those stories directly in there. There's definitely some stuff might be loosely inspired by cases I might have seen or stuff I might have been, but I try to avoid direct one-to-one transfers.
And that's always a good thing, because I know I used to work as a 911 dispatcher, and you definitely don't want to put any of that in the stories, because like you just said, you have that reality effect to it.
Right.
Somebody picks it up, they could read it, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it does help a lot when I'm like, I'm crafting things like, oh, this is how the cops would behave, or this is how a lawyer would act, or this is how the court system works. That maybe like not very like not very Law and Ordery, but it gives me like the idea of like this is how a character should respond in this situation who knows what they're doing, like invoking the Fifth Amendment with when they're talking to police or something.
Yeah, I can understand that. So I mean, you can add that quality effect into the stories. Now let's go into a little bit of the sci-fi fantasy. How did you get into that compared to the horror? Because that's
Oh,
a completely different balance.
ever since I was a kid, I really think the genres have good links to one another. I think in a lot of great science fiction, fantasy, there's some really great horror even in things like the high fantasies that we associate that we just associate with lightheartedness. Like I think there's some great horror stuff in Lord of the Rings and Narnia, and also just using those as examples. But like it's really so linked. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, when I was reading or being read through The Hobbit or listening to it on audiobook, like that whole scene with the spiders just creeped me out. But really, it was just getting into like these amazing worlds when I was a kid. Reading when I saw movies like The Last Unicorn and finding the books after that. And science fiction. My grandfather was a big part of that. He would get me into people like Heinlein and Vonnegut and all sorts of different ones and people I can't even remember right now. But I always felt there was like some kind of interlinking there. Some of the best horror stuff had fantasy aspects, and when I got into like the old sword and sorceries pulp, there was always that underedge of horror there, like all the cool monsters, all the dark sorceries, and that led to me getting in more and more and more as I got older and got into more stuff.
Well, you just mentioned The Last Unicorn, and I'm going to say my age here, but I actually remember watching that in the movie theater.
Oh wow, I'm a huge fan of the book and the movie, and like that and The Princess Bride were like two of my like favorites growing up.
So that was, yeah, that just jogged memories. And I was young, but still saw it. And it actually did have, even in the movie, it had that aspect from being young enough that it had a little bit of that tingling horror sensation, I would call it.
Yes,
So
yes. I mean, it's funny when I realize like how much guys like Christopher Lee like informed that like at an early age. I'm like, when I go back, like, oh yeah, he was in all this stuff I watched as a kid.
yeah, so true. And it's like now when I watch it, it's almost like, really, that affected me. So I mean, you do have elements when you're younger that do have, I guess, can affect you. I guess is the proper way to say
100%.
it. Is there anything that may have affected you to start the horror genre?
Probably like the earliest I got into horror was probably R.L. Stine, like the Goosebumps books, Goosebumps, Fear Street, like all the various books that followed in those footsteps. But it was like it was honestly so expansive, like that and Christopher Pike. And from there, it was like getting into like these like the dark fairy tale stuff that was coming out even for kids. But R.L. Stine was probably like my patient zero for horror when it really comes to it.
That's pretty cool. I remember my brother actually reading those books. It was some of his favorites.
Oh, great.
Goosebumps.
Really fun stuff. And it was also watching stuff on like watching like some of the old movies like the Wolfman and Dracula and the Mummy, like the old black and white ones. My uncle had a lot of those, so I got into them. And then from there it was like sneaking stuff on TV, like in like the late hours of the night, like when stuff was on. I can't even remember like half of it, but like a lot of it just made like a real impression. Like I just really enjoyed watching. I think like the first major horror film I probably watched in theaters was probably The Ring and the others, and those were just a lot of fun.
Now, this is another interesting question that just popped into my head. Being a lawyer and also being an author, you do have a different type of writing set when you're writing papers for like the henceforth and therefore and stuff like that. Do you ever
Yep.
find yourself having to correct yourself from books to?
In all honesty, not really. Like when I go to like the writing voice, it's much different. If anything, I struggle more. I struggle more sometimes with the legal aspect. Like it's harder to kind of do the drier voice there because I love I love like the fiction aspect a lot more. Like I love I find it much easier to flow with fiction and clean it up than I do with legalese because it can be just so dry sometimes. Like sometimes you get lucky and you're able to do a motion that is less dry. You're able to weave the facts in more, but I don't really struggle with the fiction side of it as much as I do with the legal side of it. Honestly, like it's harder to make it like a little drier and fact based.
Now, I know a question that a lot of other authors like to hear. Are you a planner or a pantser?
100% a pantser. I will go in with a story with a vague idea of what I want to do. I will know this is where I want the story to go. This is my idea. These are the characters. And I will figure it out as I'm writing. I will usually scenes and ideas will pop into my head as I'm going. It will just like I will just find them out as I'm writing. It's really a matter of making what's in my head conform to what I can put on the page and try to interpret it as best I can. But I am not an outliner. I will think about it a lot. I will have some ideas, but ultimately it's like a matter of this is where I want to get and I got to figure it out. And I do that by writing.
Now, let's talk about your books a little and give us an idea of what they are without any spoilers, basically.
Absolutely. So I have 3 coming out. I have one coming out in 8 days actually, which is like, wow, that's crazy. It is Hunger's as Old as This Land, which is a horror western, a Jewish LGBT horror western. And the book is about, it's set in the Old West, several decades after the Civil War. It's set in a prosperous settlement that dwells in the shadows of these mountains called the Hungers, with these monsters living with them, with the people of Gray's Bluffs have a kind of a pact with. So because of their proximity to all this fertile land, you have these railroad companies and these bankers who want to wipe them out, and they hire a group of mercenaries to deal with them. And the heroines are a pair of women from Gray's Bluffs who end up they're trying to essentially save their home, and it all kind of boils over with these monsters nearby. And it is all about the brutality of manifest destiny and discovering your true place in the world. And my book, The Long Shalom, which I would pitch as a Jewish detective pulp cosmic horror novel, it's kind of done in the style of old detective pulp meets horror, where it is about a Jewish detective in New York City during the Prohibition era, kind of the hard-boiled hero. And one night he has a knock on his door from an old flame who is basically saying, people are going missing in New York. They're not the people that the cops are missing. I need you to help me find them and help me find my brother who's also missing. And he soon learns there's more going on than anyone's telling him, that there is a lot that is not quite human about it and not quite normal. And he teams up with some of his old friends to get to the bottom of it. And they end up on trying to stop this cosmic horror conspiracy from coming to pass.
Very nice. And where can people find these books at, or soon to find these books at?
Absolutely. They're on Amazon for pre-order right now. The Long Shalom is up for pre-order at Barnes & Noble as well, and I believe they're coming up on a few other spots. Right now, Amazon is probably the best place. The Hunger's as Old as This Land is a real deal for pre-order at 99 cents. Long Shalom is up for pre-order for Kindle and paperback right now, and I'm thinking the early reviews have been awesome for both of them. I've got about 50 reviews on Hunger's right now, which is like blows me basically it blows me away. I never suspected it would be this good. I've got some, authors I really admire who have told me they really enjoy it. I'm just kind of living for that. There's a lot of people who are saying like, I don't like Westerns, but, and that's, that's always very affirming to hear. And people who say, I do like Westerns and this is great. So that is, that's a lot of fun to hear. So, yeah, things have, you can definitely find them on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it's been a lot of fun.
I do have one Western out, and I have to say, that was a fun one to write. I had to do a lot of research on it, though.
Yes, 100%.
And people don't understand that, but yes, you do. If you want to keep up with the time period, you have to research the weapons and how they were used and the terminology, too.
Yep.
Completely different from today. And it's not what you hear in the Westerns either.
Yes. I think, I did a lot of research on the West, on, the Prohibition era. I did research on, my third one, which is coming out later this year or next year, is on, the golden age of piracy. I was reading a bunch for that. That was a lot of fun.
For sure. Now, people wanted to follow you, or do you have a website or Facebook page, or?
I'm working on a website right now. That should hopefully be up within a few weeks. I said that before. I keep getting bogged down, but best places to find me are Twitter and Instagram. And I'm on Twitter at Zach Rose Writer, ZachRose Writer. And you can also find me on Twitter at Zach Rose 32. And I do have a Facebook. It's just Zach Rosenberg. Usually I use Facebook and Instagram more for, just updates. Twitter is really my social handle of choice right now. I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last, but that is, where I'm pretty much plugged into the writing community.
Well, I do want to thank you for being on, and I want to thank people for watching the show. And remember, if you're on YouTube, click the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. We're on at least once or twice a week, so definitely check us out. And again, thank you for showing up today and being on the show. And for everybody else, y'all have a good rest of the week. And until our next show,